And by coincidence, I mean two events that appear to be unrelated come together in a way that's not well explained, but might have an explanation in a surprising and hard to understand way that seems to be meaningful. Two events separate. In 2006, I developed, with the help of some researchers, the Weird Coincidence Survey, which you can take on my website. The reason I did the survey in the first place was to find out how common are these things and what are the most common ones. And we did 1,000 people at the University of Missouri in Columbia, and we came up with some answers which pretty much said, hey, weird coincidences commonly occur. That was my first scientific kind of way of approaching it. But after that, it was like trying to figure it out. Synchronicity is a term coined by Carl Jung, and he didn't mean meaningful coincidence when he coined the term, although that's the way it's used now. Synchronicity tends to be used as a meaningful coincidence, but he was using the term as an acausal connecting principle. He was using synchronicity as a way of explaining meaningful coincidences. But now we know the common usage as words change refers to meaningful coincidences. And for Jungians, particularly strict Jungians, meaningful coincidences or synchronicity specifically means a coincidence that helps you grow psychologically, spiritually, and interpersonally. So it's tends to be a psychological idea, spiritual idea. Jung was very spiritual and was a psychotherapist, obviously. But it's used in other ways. And serendipity is a word that is summarized by happy accidents, coined by Horace Walpole in the 1800s, in the 1700s. Horace Walpole could find things he was looking for in kind of strange ways. And happy accidents is a way of describing looking for something and finding it in a way that you didn't think you were going to find it. You weren't trying to find it, and there it was. And the other use of serendipity is not looking for anything, but just having to see something and seeing the significance of it. A lot of medical research and Nobel laureates as well have come across their discoveries by happy accidents.
And then what about seriality and simultaneity?
Seriality differs from serendipity and synchronicity in that with synchronicity and serendipity, you have a thought in your mind, like I have this idea about these two tackling dummies and what might happen on Saturday. It's in my mind. It's only me doing it. Nobody else is seeing it. And then running for 90 yards, somebody else could see. So there's a mental event and an objective event that other people can see. And those are true in both serendipity and synchronicity. But with seriality, it's like everybody who wanted to look can see. For example, we just heard one about a bird that was a particular kind of bird that was present in several different people's lives, reported to one person around the same time. The great blue heron was a signal of death for many different people talking in the same time in our coincidence cafe. We have a coincidence cafe once a month where people who want to talk about coincidences talk about coincidences. And that's where this past Saturday, lots of stories about the great blue heron. And everybody could see a great blue heron and know that somebody died. So these are objective events. It's seeing a great blue heron several times that makes it a series.
So you mentioned the data. What else does the data say about coincidences in a way that, because I think that's important. It's not just, you're hanging out talking to people who have, severe mental health issues, like the musician who's, flying. There's some real data and research here.
Yeah. And out of Johns Hopkins, where they're doing psychedelics with depression and other things, one of the researchers reports that seeing a lot of coincidences helps people feel better. They feel more connected, more involved. It's a positive experience for them. And I didn't have that question quite in my research. My research tried to say who, like as you were asking, who is more likely to see a coincidence? What kind of personalities seem to contribute? And being spiritual and religious was a start, but we used some pretty standard personality questions and found out as it seems obvious when you think about it, but it's a lot of things seem obvious only when you think about it, is that the people who see the most coincidences have a personality that is self-referential. That is, they see things that's about them. It's like people who are depressed saying it's all my fault, or grandiosity people who think I'm the most wonderful. You got to like think I'm wonderful. They're self-referential psychiatrically, but there's a continuum of that too. So people who tend to think, oh, they're talking about me over there when two people are talking, that's self-referential too. So the tendency to see connections between external events and internal events is fundamental to seeing coincidences. And so that personality type we have shown is most likely to be able to see them.
I think faith plays a significant role. I think generally speaking, if you're open to coincidence, synchronicity, serendipity, that there is a supreme being or a larger force other than you driving things, you're more open to that. On the other hand, if you're not, you are probably not going to be open to finding meaning in something that seems random.
Confirmed by our research. People who were to find themselves as spiritual were the most open to coincidence, reported the most of them, and religious people recorded a lot of them also. And those who were not so much did not. So that's right. If you're open to them, you see them. People start looking for coincidences. The funny thing is, some people who are looking for them don't find them and they get upset about not being able to find them. The bell shaped curve applies here, the normal curve, so that there are some people who overdo it and they see patterns that aren't there. And there are some people who don't see the patterns that are there on the other ends of the continuum. And there are various frequencies in between. It's very possible. It's very possible to overdo and to underdo a lot of things. And this is true of coincidences as well.
I want to come back to the science again. Something I thought was so interesting, you touched on the book. Psi mediated instrumental responses, or PMIR, which came out of Stanford. So pretty credible, I would say.
Yeah, Rex Stanford was a parapsychology researcher who was president of the Parapsychology Association who came up with that idea. Psi mediated instrumental response means something psi, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognition, comes into you. I mean, you don't know it so consciously, maybe, and then you act on it, you respond, and then it works. Psi mediated, instrumental, it works, response. Well, that's kind of a nice way of obscuring the basic idea. Stanford did research to show that this happens, which means you can walk, drive, go to places without knowing quite why you're going there, and you will see something, you will experience something that's valuable to you. So it's beyond our consciousness, it's our subconscious or intuition kind of guiding us to where we need to be, kind of like birds flying to the right place. We have our own internal GPS capacities, spotting where we need to be and getting there without planning it rationally. Well, I have a model for how that works. You have the woman and the man, and you have each of them having a higher self, and each one is connected to its higher self, her to her higher self, him to his higher self. And the more emotional connection they have between them, the stronger the connection of the two higher selves up in what I call the psychosphere, our mental atmosphere, which we could talk about as well. So it's a kind of a rectangle. Let's kind of moves around a lot. It's just a general shape of that. So she sent it up to her higher self, which connected to his higher self, which connected to his lower self, and got him to go talk with her. That's my simple model.
Does novelty play a role here?
Novelty is very important. What do you think that? How do you think novelty is part of this?
Well, I think in terms of probability, you're going to open yourself up to more coincidences, or if you experience more settings.
Yes.
If you take a different path, like if you walk the same way to work every day, or wherever you're walking every day, you're going to probably see the same people every time, the same stores, the same dogs, whatever may have you. But if you go 10 different ways, you'll experience 10 different things. You open yourself up.
That's why it's a good idea to get lost every once in a while, because that's what's going to happen. Yes. And there's good data from the serendipity researchers that this is absolutely true. The richer the environment, the more likely you will have serendipity happen. And you get rich environments by going to different places, not just the one that you know. So you have to decide, agency, your decision, free will. What are you going to make out of this? It's a signpost, but you don't have to take it. You don't have to follow it. It's not a command.
There's something to be said for when you recognize a coincidence, recognize it and take an action. Do we set ourselves up for strengthening that muscle or being presented with more coincidences? Or if a coincidence is presented and you ignore it, it will potentially keep on coming back to you until it smacks you in the face.
Well, those are both right. One of the key ideas, Jason, if I could get it across somehow, is that this is not a bipolar either or thing, the coincidence thing. There is bipolar, polarity and continuum. And a lot of times it's both or some degree of each. For example, random plays a role in coincidences. Mystery, God, universe, plays a role in coincidences. And so do we to varying degrees. Two of the other best ways of increasing them is to be able to write them down and see the patterns. Take a coincidence diary. You'll see yourself reflected in them. And the other is to tell each other the way you are telling me and I am telling you, tell each other coincidence stories, because we get to hear people saying, oh, this is my story. And then you hear somebody saying, oh, that's my story too. Or I've got one just like that. So you become confirmed in the idea that you're not crazy. I was confident enough in my observations that I thought there was something there. And they were so meaningful emotionally, my dog and my father, that they meant something feeling wise to me. So when you start having feelings about them, as they keep repeating, as you have about Coconut Grove, those begin to sensitize you and open you up to looking for them.
Of all the studies, of all the research, is there one that stands above the rest, in your opinion?
There has not been much research in synchronicity. There's a lot on serendipity, but they're pretty narrow. I think I put together this field better than anybody else has, including things from research, ideas from research, and personal experiences of me and other people. There's nothing that stands out as a synchronicity, serendipity research thing that is better than what I've put together, I think.
So, do you think the scientific community takes coincidences seriously enough?
Well, that's where we all got a job, Jason. I went to Yale and Stanford. I wrote a book that, yes, as you said. So, I got qualification of a chair of a psychiatry department. I'm supposed to know something in this. And I haven't gone off the deep end that I can tell, but I have tried to say something about how coincidences are useful during psychotherapy, for example. And there's data to show that. There's data to show that.
And where I'm going with this is, I was joking before the show, we've had Jim Tucker and Bruce Grayson, and now you're all working out of Charlottesville. And it seems like UVA is like the only institution that actually is open to this type of work, which is outside the box, if you will, and unexplainable.
In regular scientific terms.
Exactly. And I think some of my struggles with science is sometimes it's not black and white. Sometimes there's gray. Sometimes we don't know why someone recovered over here and this person, didn't, and science can't explain it. And I think and I think even people in the scientific community would argue that that's the problem with science right now.
There are these peculiar faculties of the psyche, that it isn't entirely confined to space and time. You can have dreams or visions of the future. You can see round corners and such things. Only ignorance deny these facts. It's quite evident that they do exist and have existed always. Now, these facts show that the psyche, in part at least, is not dependent upon these confinements. And then what? When the psyche is not under that obligation to live in time and space alone, and obviously it doesn't, then to that extent, the psyche is not submitted to those laws. And that means a practical continuation of life, of a sort of psychical existence beyond time and space.